Thank you. All right. Welcome, everyone. So glad that you're able to be on this call today. I'm the host for you today. My name is Avon Yaldo. I am the Midwest AMCP student liaison for our chapter, and glad that we can have some of the schools of pharmacy that are part of our chapter, maybe others in this meeting today. The hope objective of this webinar is to get, my expectation is majority of the people on this call are pharmacy students, and really to gain some guidance on pharmacy residency, specifically one in managed care, maybe to help you investigate further if one might be right for you, share some tips on what you can do before and during residency to help maximize your chance of getting the residency you want, along with, I guess, achieving success in your residency to deliver potential opportunities beyond just the entry-level pharmacy service roles that sometimes you would have maybe if you just graduate from pharmacy school and didn't do a residency. So my hope is, and I think everyone on this panel, is to measure our success with today's discussion with the audience on this call, that you're actively engaged with questions, and the content provided by each of our terrific panelists will have all of the students here on the call increase our understanding of managed care pharmacy residency and understand the support to ascertain if they'd like to seek maybe further residency information in the future. I'm going to now hand off the panel discussion for introductions to get started with our moderator, Marnie.
Thanks, Avon. Hi, all. Welcome. My name is Marnie Wickheiser. I'm the Director of Clinical Services at Navitus Health Solutions based in Madison, Wisconsin. Thanks again for being here. I'm also the Residency Program Director, the RPD for our Managed Care Residency Program. We have 3 managed care residents each year. For reference, I've been with Navitus for 15 years, and our residency program started about 10 years ago.
Thanks, Marnie. I'm Jim Carlson. I am a lead surveyor with ASHP and survey lots of different residency programs, including the PGY1 managed care residency programs. Actually, at this time, I'm the only lead surveyor that surveys PGY1 managed care residency programs. I spent about 30 years in practice as a residency director or residency program coordinator in a couple of different managed care organizations. And so I've got lots of background and experience in managed care and a lot of passion for residency training. So happy to be here and share with you some thoughts and ideas that we have.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Lynn. I am a manager of pharmacy clinical programs and customer support at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. I also serve as the program director of our PGY1 managed care pharmacy residency program that is in collaboration with University of Michigan. So I've spent many years involved with residency training. I've been a preceptor for residency programs for 10 years. So that's how long our program has been around at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. I've been the RPD for the past 5 years, and prior to that, the residency program coordinator for 3 years. So happy to spend this afternoon with you all about residency programs.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen Lotz. I'm the manager of our prescription drug plan here at the University of Michigan. I'm also the residency program director. I've been with the University of Michigan's prescription drug plan for about 5 years now, but I've been involved with residency programs for about 10. Also happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sunny Hirapara. I'm a regional clinical account director with AstraZeneca. As you can tell, I am not a residency director, actually. I was the first resident at Navitus, so Marnie does hold a special place in my heart because when she mentioned 10 years, I can't believe it's been 10 years now. But I was the first resident there, and I hope to bring some perspective on some of the career opportunities after residency. Just for your perspective, I've worked in a host of different roles, from working in managed care, PBMs, health plans, marketing, and now in pharma. So glad to be here. Looking forward to a lot of conversation.
Yeah. And hello, everyone. I'm Courtney Quinn. I am one of the PGY1 managed care residents at Navitus Health Solutions. So kind of, stepping into the role that Sunny used to hold. And then I am also a recent graduate from University of Wisconsin-Madison Pharmacy School. And I'm excited to be here and answer any questions from the resident perspective as well.
All right, so just a few housekeeping notes. We do, as I said when I started this, we want you guys to be actively engaged, but we're going to have a little presentation to get started. So questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation, but we hope that you guys use the QA function that's part of the Zoom. And we're going to take those questions, as many as we can. And for prioritization, if you'd like, please upvote a question and we'll try our best to take those on as they come. And if we can't, we'll try. Some of them will maybe be answered just through text, through the Q&A. And if we need more support, we'll find a way to get your questions answered. So we appreciate it. And I think we're going to get started with a polling question.
Surprised to see the answers thus far. I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here. So here I'm going to go ahead and share the results as well. So the question was, what are your plans after graduation? And a significant number of the group has answered residency or fellowship. So this is really relevant to our audience. So appreciate everyone answering the poll.
Great, thanks, Sunny. What I want to do now is maybe walk through a few slides to just give some overview to residency accreditation in managed care, and then maybe spend a couple minutes talking about what residency program directors look for as they're looking at residency applicants. So I'll just kind of run through these and then we'll get to the Q&A, because I think that's probably the most important aspect that helps you, but we'll try to set a little context for you. So some of the options for pursuing managed care careers after graduation from pharmacy school is pursuing an accredited managed care residency. And all accredited residency programs in pharmacy are accredited by ASHP. The managed care programs are accredited by ASHP in a partnership with AMCP. And that's why we're sort of working very collaboratively here. There are some non-accredited managed care residencies out there, which ASHP and AMCP really don't have any oversight over. There's fellowships that are out there. Obviously, there's opportunities potentially for entry-level positions in managed care, or after people have either completed other residencies other than managed care, and worked in maybe a hospital or an ambulatory care setting for a while, then transition into a managed care environment. So those are lots of different options that I have seen across the board, how you can transition into managed care. So as I mentioned, the accreditation is in partnership with AMCP so that we have the managed care component really represented in the accreditation standard, in the accreditation training curriculum as well. So all the programs that are accredited meet very specific requirements. In the residency design, they have to have a design that's well thought out, well put together, so it's consistent resident to resident. There's a set of policies that we ask each residency program to have in place to make it clear to the residents what is required and what the implications of not following some of the policies are. The curriculum is a very consistent curriculum, meaning that there's specific things that the accreditation standard and competency areas, goals, and objectives that are required by the standard. They're consistent among all managed care accredited residency programs. So that's one aspect that you get, is you get a consistent set of things that you are taught. There's a requirement for ensuring that the residents get an appropriate amount of feedback and evaluation, because we feel that's very important to the growth and development of a resident. And then obviously making sure that the resident grows and develops throughout the residency, and there's a tracking process to ensure that that actually happens. So it's a much more structured environment than just working in an environment for a year. So these are sort of the steps in accreditation. So if a organization wants to start a residency and pursue accreditation, they are what we call pre-candidate status. So if you look on the residency directory at ASHP and you see that a managed care residency has a status of pre-candidate, that means they've applied to be accredited, but they don't have any residents in their program yet. So we actually can't accredit them until a resident has completed the residency. At least one resident has completed the residency. If it says candidate status, that means that they've applied for accreditation and there is a resident in the residency program, but the residency program hasn't been fully accredited yet. And then of course, the third option is accredited, which means that they've had a resident in the program that's completed the program. They've had an on-site or a virtual survey process. It's gone to the accrediting board for final review and decision-making, and they are fully accredited. So a couple of implications of accreditation that I wanted to touch on. If a program is in candidate status and becomes accredited, then that resident that was in that program while they were in candidate status is retroactively given a certificate that says that they completed an accredited program. So if you're looking at programs that say pre-candidate or candidate, then if once they become, I guess I should say if, but once they become accredited, then any of the residents in that program would receive an accredited certificate. One thing that's a benefit is when you complete an accredited PGY1 residency program, you can actually sit for your board certification immediately after completion of that residency program. If you don't complete a residency program or an accredited residency program, then you have to wait 3 years in order to sit for the boards. And that's just one of the rules that the board certification groups have. Another thing to consider is some employers require or prefer graduates from an accredited residency program. And I would say the last thing, and this is as an accreditor, this is sort of what I would call the good housekeeping seal of approval, though most of the people on this call don't actually know what that means. But basically, we're saying that it's a program that is designed and run properly, and it ensures that the resident's best interest is kept in mind, so that we don't wind up with a situation where the resident just winds up doing work and is an extra staffing person to get work done under the guise of it being a residency program. So currently, we have about 47 accredited PGY1 managed care residency programs, and within those programs, there's about 75 positions. So some have 1, some have 2. I think Marnie's program has 3. So there's different numbers of positions within the managed care residency programs. Some timelines to kind of keep in the back of your mind. In a couple of weeks, there's the AMCP Nexus meeting in National Harbor, Maryland. They have a residency showcase. Many managed care residency programs will be there. It's an opportunity to meet with the program directors and just find out more information about their programs. The ASHP Midyear, which is in Las Vegas this year, also has a residency showcase. Obviously, it's not specific to managed care, whereas the Nexus meeting is. And then typically most programs require applications to be due around January 1st. And currently programs that are accredited or in the accreditation process, there's a process for submitting your applications through a system called Forecast. So it's an automated system. You just upload your information and electronically apply to the different programs that you're interested in applying to. In January and February is typically when organizations interview residents. And again, I'm not going to speak to that, but some were COVID. Most interviews were done virtually. I think some may be moving back to in-person interviews, but just keep that in mind. In early March, then ultimately you have to submit your rank of which organizations you would like to match with in terms of the residency programs there. The match results come out in mid-March, and then usually right around July 1st is when the residency program starts. So that's just a quick timeline of when things happen. So some of the characteristics of managed care residency programs, the things that are variable would be the setting. Some may be a health plan, some may be a PBM, some may be various components of the healthcare system that have aspects of managed care. Different organizations have different lines of business. Some have Medicare, some have Medicaid, some focus more on commercial. The number of residents, as I mentioned, the number of patient care experiences can be variable. The number of preceptors can be variable. How much teaching you wind up being involved with, what your staffing expectations are, how many pharmacists are in the organization. Those are very, very variable. I mean, incredibly variable. The things that are more consistent is the fact that your learning experiences or rotations are a mix typically of some what we would call block rotations, typically 4 to 6 weeks in duration, and some would be longitudinal. So they may be 9 to 12 months, kind of layered on top of some of the block experiences. There's presentations that will be required. Obviously, evaluations, not only are you being evaluated by your preceptors, you are evaluating your preceptors as well, and as well as conducting self-evaluation of your own activities. Some of the things that programs look for, want to make sure that you have come in with some diverse work and experiences in your academic endeavors, especially if you're applying for managed care. Making sure that you try as much as you can to identify opportunities to experience managed care activities. Volunteer experiences are important. It shows that you're engaged in your community. Active involvement in pharmacy organizations, again, showing early on in your career that you're actively involved in your profession. Bringing in a self-awareness and an ability to self-reflect is really an important thing to consider. Research experiences, bringing in any kind of project management or research experience will help elevate your application as well. And then bringing in presentation experiences. This is an important feature of all residency programs, is learning how to present to audiences. You know, we do it now virtually as well. So doing it in person, doing it virtually, I think are really important skills that you will build on. But again, programs look for those when looking for candidates. Some of the things, and again, you'll see some similarities here, things that oftentimes are gaps that applicants have, and that is that active involvement in pharmacy, some intern experience, making sure that you can demonstrate to people that you actually can work in the pharmacy environment. Having a lot of volunteer experience is helpful. making sure that opportunities in managed care show up on your CV so that people know that you actually are interested in managed care as you apply to those. And the last is just making sure that you communicate with programs that you're interested in, whether it be residency showcases, meetings, if you're in the area, on-site visits, doing a quick Zoom meeting with people, staying in contact with organizations that you're interested in is another important aspect. And I think we'll transition over to our Q&A, and I think I'll turn it over to Marnie to help orchestrate this. So Marnie?
Thanks, Jim. Yes, now we'll move on to our panel or our question and answer session. We've included 10 questions in this deck, sort of our top 10 questions that we frequently get from students. As a quick reminder of our panelists, again, we have Jim, who is ASHP surveyor and past RPD. Sunny is a past resident. Alex is an RPD. Stephen is an RPD, and Courtney, current resident. I'm also an RPD. Today I'll be serving as the question asker. We'll also keep an eye on the Q&A chat box. So please submit your own questions too, and we'll do our best to keep an eye on those as they come through. Our question number 1 is here, and this one is for Jim and then Sunny, please. If we live in an area far from the residencies or we don't know current residents in the programs, how would you recommend getting in touch with current residents?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I really do encourage this because one of the things that is important is to get a sense from the residents what the residency is all about, because you can talk to the program directors, you can talk to the preceptors, but we may have a different perspective of the reality of the residency program than the residents who are actually in it. So I would just recommend that you reach out to the contact information that's usually provided on their residency website, and just ask if you can either have a quick Zoom meeting with 1 or 2 of the residents, just to get a sense from them of what their experiences have been. If you're local, again, I think that's great. Maybe you go out to a happy hour with one of the residents or a couple of the residents and just meet up with them in a more casual environment. Again, I think it's just really an important thing to really understand if the organization and the residency program really is a fit for you. So Sunny, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think one part of the question is you don't know who the current residents are, you don't know where this information is located. So there's 2 places you can look. First will be the AMCP website. There is a section in the residency column. It should be pretty easy to find, where they have a list of every single residency that is currently accredited by ASHP and AMCP, which will also have the email address and the contact information for the current residency director. My recommendation is simply reach out to that residency director and see if they will be willing to put you in touch with the current resident. I'll just tell you from my own experience, we've had that happen plenty of times at Navitas, and I cannot stress to the students enough how important this is. Just as Jim had mentioned, the number of times that we hear your name and see your faces and see how much you're willing to engage with the current residency program or the current residents. Keep in mind, the current residents may even move on to be employees of that specific location that they currently residents at, which probably would mean that they're likely going to be a potential preceptor for the residency program. And we are all human, and we tend to remember the individuals that are going to come out and do some outreach and really learn about the program. And as Jim had mentioned, you're really going to get a full look at what the residency program is going to be about, what the resident thinks about that program. And it's an opportunity to ask them questions one-on-one. So I highly encourage those students who are interested in any one of the programs to do that. I'll leave it with one last comment and say that a lot of students that I've spoken to are afraid of reaching out. I'm not sure where that fear comes from. Maybe it's some sense of rejection, but I will tell you right now, every residency director, every resident that is currently in a program is looking for students to actually have some sort of outreach within the program, because we want to put that information out there. We want students to be interested in our programs. And so the likelihood that you're going to get a positive response by reaching out via email, I would say, is extremely high. So don't be afraid, reach out. You're going to get a positive response, and a lot of the current residents will be happy to talk to you. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Moving on to number 2. Are most of the residents able to find a job in the area of managed care after residency? Jim, I know employment rates are strong, but do you happen to have stats?
Yeah, so we at ASHP, we actually ask residents who have completed the residency program for information about what they are doing after they finish their residency program. And what we know over the last couple of years, and Marnie helped me here because I forgot to write down the exact stats, but I think it was around 65–70% of the people over the last couple of years said that right after they finished their managed care residency, they were joining an organization and working in managed care. What we don't know is what all that means. In other words, that might mean that somebody was going to take a couple of months off and, travel the world. Residents tend to do that. When I was a resident, I had no money to do that. But that's what residents sometimes do. It's interesting to me. But that's about what it has been. Other people may wind up being limited geographically to where they can move, and so they may not be able to secure a managed care position in the geographic area that they may wind up being limited to. And so that may be another restriction. But I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, that 65–70% over the last few years have been immediately going into a managed care position right after residency.
We can move on to question 3 is for Stephen, Alex, and Courtney. What are the percentage of residents successfully hired at your organization after residency?
Sure, I could start. I think my answer might be a little bit shorter. So of our 6 residents that we've had since I've been with the University of Michigan, 2 are still with the University of Michigan. 1 is on my team, and 1 is a drug information pharmacist at the health system. And because my program is a bit smaller than most, we have a very small team. It's just a space issue. I wish I could hire all of my residents, but I currently have one former resident working on my team.
Yeah, so for our residents at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, so our residents, prior to completing our residency program, they all have a job lined up post-residency. So we're very proud how our residents are able to have gainful employment upon completion of our residency program. A large proportion stay on board with us at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, but others will seek opportunities outside of our institution as well. And it really boils down to the type of opportunity that the particular resident is interested in. Perhaps, at the time we don't have a position open that aligns with their interests, so they may seek a position outside of our organization. And we're definitely supportive of that as well, because we really want to ensure it's the right fit, the right type of position that our residents are seeking. So I'm very happy to serve as a reference to our residents as they seek any type of position anywhere. And the types of positions that our residents have gone into really span the whole gamut. So yeah, we do have traditional managed care positions working on utilization management, drug information, provider partnerships, drug pipeline, medical benefit drug management, as well as pharmaceutical industry. We have IPD analytics, which is more of like drug intelligence, as well as specialty consulting. So it's a wide variety of different positions that our residents are equipped to go into. And I think it's just a testament to the breadth and variety of experiences that can be offered through managed care residency training.
And then for me here at Navitas, it really varies year to year how many residents are hired on, but kind of a snapshot in time for the past 4 years, 70% of the Navitas residents have been hired on either at Navitas or at Lumicera, which is our on-site specialty pharmacy. And then as a whole, 100% of those former residents were hired into managed care roles kind of in general. So not at Navitas, but in the space of managed care. And in my experience as a current resident, I interact with former residents on pretty much a daily basis across all of the different teams at Navitas that I work with. Prior to this meeting, I was in a meeting with, I think there was at least 2 former residents there. So there's a lot of us kind of hanging out at Navitas, which is helpful because people can give you their sage advice when you're a current resident as well.
Thank you. We have one in the Q&A section online. We have a question. I'm thinking maybe Stephen and Sunny, if you'd want to chime in on this one. It's, do you have any tips for preparing for residency showcases and approaching the programs there?
Yeah, so I've been part of the preparing for residency showcases at ASHP and AMCP. As a student, I went to over 4 or 5 of them, and then I was also on the other end of being the showcase holder alongside Marnie and watching students approach us. So my first piece of advice would be is have a game plan. So really look at what residency programs will be there and determine which ones you want to interact with. So when you go there, it doesn't seem as overwhelming. There are going to be a lot of booths, and you may want to talk to a lot of different organizations, but if you have a little bit of preparation about what kind of institution you may want to work at, if you want to work at a PBM or a health plan, are you looking for a little bit more of a patient experience alongside managed care? So do you want to work with, do you want to have a component of specialty pharmacy alongside your managed care experience? So identify what you're maybe potentially looking for. And I will say you don't have to necessarily have that locked down, but just have an idea of what you're looking to explore. When you go to the conference itself, when you, like, for example, for Nexus will have a list of all the residency programs that will be there. They will most likely even provide a map of where those residency programs will be located. So when the residency showcase opens up, you can actually go in and have a game plan of which ones you want to talk to, and then approach them. Have a CV in hand, maybe even a business card, and really go up to each booth and introduce yourselves to the current residency director. Maybe talk to the current resident if they are there, and then make your rounds, right? And that should give you an idea of a feeling of what the program is about. You may get a little bit more information by the pamphlets that they have currently available at the station itself and themselves. And then if you do get a feeling of what you are looking for, and you find a spark with maybe one of the programs or a couple of the programs, there may be an opportunity to even talk to the residency director or the resident thereafter, whether it be at some kind of happy hour or some kind of networking event thereafter within the AMCP Nexus conference. So that's the typical way. And one of the things I will say is, just try to be yourself. Firm handshake, know what you're looking for, smile, just like anyone else, right? You want to be approachable as much as you can. It will be a little, daunting, right? Because you want to make a good impression with these residency directors. But what we're really looking for, and Marnie, correct me if I'm wrong here, or any of the other residency directors, is that we want to see what your personality is like, what would be like to work with you, really where your drive is, what kind of, and, have some questions prepared. And things of those nature, because when you ask those sort of questions, we will remember when we get your application at one point, we'll remember, oh yeah, remember so-and-so shook our hand at the AMCP Nexus conference, and I remember them, and now we have their application. So it's nice to put a face to a name, especially when you get an application through Forecast. So that's my answer. If anyone else has anything, please go ahead and chime in.
Thanks, Sunny. Stephen, do you have something to add to that one?
Not really. That was perfect, Sunny. I agreed with everything you said. Yeah, just to restate, preparation is key. The people who come to our booth that know what our program is about, who have done their research, those are the students that stand out, and those are the students that I remember. So yeah, preparation is definitely important.
Great. There's one more question in the Q&A we'll take, and then we'll move on to the question 4 on the screen. Alex, perhaps for you, it's addressed to RPDs. Jim mentioned the option of BCPS certification. Do you think passing these boards will become the norm or more of a requirement like traditional pharmacy residencies?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I noticed, like, even as I browse like LinkedIn, seeing a lot more people getting board certified. I think it's great that after completing a residency, immediately after, you would be eligible to take that certification. I don't know about necessarily being a requirement, but I think it definitely helps set candidates apart when they're applying for positions further in their careers. Considering all things equal, maybe having that certification may, swing in the, be an advantage for the other candidate. So yeah. Stephen, anything else to add, or Marnie?
No, nothing to add. Thanks, Alex. And then this question 4 is one we hear a lot. What does a quote unquote typical day look like for a managed care resident? Alex, if you want to start, and then perhaps Stephen and Courtney can chime in.
Sure. So, overall, the way that a residency program is structured is that there are, longitudinal experiences throughout the year. So the resident is constantly working on multiple projects throughout the residency year, but at the same time, they have their blocked learning experiences that can range from about 3 weeks in duration and upwards of perhaps 10 to 11 weeks. So it's having a balance of managing those different learning experiences and the different projects and assignments associated with those. So for part of a typical resident day, they'll have their Outlook open, they'll have their Microsoft Teams open, because those are the main methods of communication with our coworkers, especially since now many of us are in a hybrid work setup. So participating in meetings throughout the day, while at the same time responding to emails, working on projects and assignments. So really being able to prioritize assignments based on the different due dates and stuff. So a lot of great variety to the typical day of a managed care resident.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Stephen.
I was just going to agree with Alex. Our residents spend a lot of time on screens with Teams and Outlook, and it's a lot of project time. Again, the concentrated projects and the longitudinal projects, there's kind of a blend throughout the day, a lot of meetings. Our program is a little bit different too, in that we have a lot of clinic time. So our resident will actually go out to our specialty pharmacy and go to our ambulatory care pharmacies, depending on the rotation, 1 to 3 times a week. So we offer a little bit more patient-facing opportunities than most managed care programs would. But yeah, a typical day really depends. And also in the kind of the Zoom era, our residents' work days today look a lot different than they did 3 years ago, where our residents are mostly remote, mostly hybrid. Whereas 3 years ago, that would never happen. We were all in person all the time. So yeah, it's a lot of screen time, but also for us, we have a lot of clinic time as well.
Yeah. And then the one thing that I was going to add, just thinking about my perspective as a recent graduate, I would always hear you're doing a lot of projects, but what are those projects? It's hard to know, and it can really vary. But to give you guys an example of some of the things that I'm currently working on right now, some things we've got on the go is a request to help with a guest lecture for a couple different courses at the School of Pharmacy. So that's adjacent to the residency program, but kind of something we volunteered for, working on preparations for drug presentations that we're going to be giving at the P&T meeting that we're having in November. Also grading some papers for pharmacy students. So that's an aspect of the teaching component of our residency, working on a program for population health. So kind of developing an offering that we could have here as part of that rotation. And then also my longitudinal research project. So it hits a lot of different areas, and it depends on what rotations you're currently participating in the residency, but hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of a concrete sense of, it's a lot of project work and what that actually means for one residency. Obviously, I can only speak to my experience.
Great. Question 5, if Sunny, you'd be willing to kick it off. I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but question 5, what excites you most about the future of managed care?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing is managed care is not going away. There is a lot of aspects of managed care that can be transferable in a lot of areas of pharmacy in general. So as I had referenced previously, I've worked in a lot of different sectors that touch managed care. And I think as I started as a student, I don't think I had a full grasp of what that would necessarily entail. So just for reference for the group here, I worked, when I graduated, I worked at Navitas. I worked with Marnie. We were on the clinical programs team. So I was in charge of managing clinical programs. And for those that are not familiar what clinical programs are essentially the inputs and the outputs of what the PBM has from a data perspective, and really identifying where we think we can do one of two things, really improve the outcome of someone's health or decrease the cost of care so that we can spread the care out a little bit more, right? So whether that be an adherence program by simply just making sure that people take their medication, or something along the lines of making sure that people are not taking too many opioids, right? So that's the kind of work that I did there. And then from there, I went into working for a marketing firm. I did not see that coming into the fruition of my career, but somehow that's where I landed. This is where I was working at a company called Precision Value, where I was essentially creating documents on behalf of pharmaceutical companies and marketing to managed care organizations. So a lot of times when you'll see this as a resident, you'll have pharmaceutical representatives come into your organization and ask for your time. I would be then responsible for creating some of that content behind the scenes on what really jived with managed care organizations, what was the kind of messaging that we wanted to take. And of course, that was an interesting position to take on, because I really never saw that as something that I would have been doing as a current resident. That opportunity just landed on my lap at that time. Thereafter, I worked at a different PBM. I was at Caremark for a little while, where I was a senior clinical advisor. Here, this is where my training as a managed care resident really came into fruition, because I was able to use all aspects of what I learned during my managed care residency and apply it into what I was doing within Caremark. Essentially, I was a jack of all trades, had to understand a little bit about everything that was managed care, whether that be rebates, clinical programs, how to code a formulary, how to build a formulary, how to give presentations, what did the pipeline look like on the new drugs that were coming out, so that our clients could prepare for the future. And then somehow, some way, I then landed transferring into a pharmaceutical industry. So now I'm the individual that is actually going into managed care organizations and speaking with those individuals that are making formulary decisions, that are key stakeholders within their organizations, and trying to make sure that they are extremely well informed about the drugs that my company makes before they make those decisions, and really create a relationship with those individuals so we can get that face time. So I've come full circle within managed care. I think what excites me about managed care is that we continue to expand the role of pharmacists within managed care organizations. I'll give you an example, like even at Navitas, our previous CEO at Navitas was a pharmacist. The CEO of previously at Caremark was also a pharmacist. There are a lot of opportunities you can take as much as you've learned in your managed care in your managed care experience and apply it clinically. If you want to learn more about the business side, you can expand over there. I just think what's exciting is that there's not a lot of limits to what you can do with that experience. And I think I can be an example of that. And I don't necessarily know what tomorrow is going to hold. And I find that exciting, right? And I think if you talk to any of the current residents or any of the residency directors, every day is a challenge. Every day is different. There's not a single day in managed care that's necessarily going to be the same. And I think that's really exciting.
Thanks, Sunny. Alex, anything you'd like to add to this one?
Sure. I really like how managed care is always at the forefront of the latest and greatest in what's going on. So, currently with technology, digital therapeutics, this is stuff that we haven't even learned in pharmacy school. So I just think that's so exciting how we get to work with, the latest advancements in therapy that are available, how a lot of new novel therapies are being developed, gene and cellular that, conditions that previously didn't have any FDA approved products available. So, tracking outcomes of these medications and trying to come up with some innovative payment models to ensure, the affordability of healthcare overall. So I just think those are really exciting about managed care, just the advances that there are and how we get to be at the forefront of it all.
Okay, question 6 is for Stephen. Another part of the application process for many programs is submission of a piece of writing and a presentation. What are some common topics that you've seen of past or current residents?
Sure, I can share. As of 2 years ago, we've asked all of our residents to present to us a new drug. To Alex's point, usually we pick a latest and greatest, something that's new to market, just because we like to see how the students kind of approach these newer novel therapies. And also because our P&T is such a big part of our program, and presenting on new drugs to our P&T is such an integral part of the residency. We just want to make sure that the potential candidate, the resident, has kind of a skill set that would work well with our P&T. I can't share. Before we went to remote, so as of 2 years ago, all of our interviews have been online via Zoom. Before then, we had in-person interviews, and what we would do is we would actually give our student a very simple de-identified data set with some questions to answer, and give them 30 minutes with the data, and then come back to us to present their findings. Typically, we would give them some hints like what we were looking for, but really what we wanted the student to tell us the story with what they saw. And that was actually a pretty fun part of the interview, which we really enjoyed. We're actually talking about bringing that back in some form going forward.
Great. Question 7, Courtney, if you want to start with, and then Sunny, what made you choose managed care pharmacy versus fellowship versus a clinical residency? Why managed care residency program?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, in pharmacy school, wasn't really sure what type or what area of pharmacy I wanted to go to. So you guys, being on this webinar are already probably a couple steps ahead of me from where I was at. But I made an effort to really explore as much as I could, looking at ambulatory care, inpatient, specialty pharmacy. And I didn't know a lot about managed care until my 4th year. And I actually did a 4th year rotation here at Navitas, and that helped me kind of visualize what I was looking for in a residency and in my future career as well. After having a lot of hospital rotations, I found the clinical aspect of it really interesting, but more of the day-to-day work wasn't something that I could really picture myself doing long-term. When I came to Navitas and saw kind of the larger scale and scope of managed care, that was really exciting for me, seeing that you could have a larger impact for patients kind of across the country rather than just within a certain health system or clinic. And I really liked that, as well as the people and the culture. And then I think what really solidified my decision was focusing on what my top priorities were. So like I said, I really enjoyed the clinical aspect of some of my rotations, and I wanted to maintain my clinical knowledge and also have the opportunity to impact patient care. I wasn't so focused on it being direct patient care, but being able to improve healthcare in some way was a goal of mine. And then the final thing was that I really wanted a residency that was supportive of my growth while also feeling sustainable and honestly balanced with my life outside of pharmacy. And I think that that was kind of what drove me to managed care. I saw that I could get all of those things. I would have the opportunity to, like Alex mentioned before, be on the forefront of things in the pharmacy world, learning about new things every day. And that was mainly the driver for me. I didn't consider a lot of fellowships, mainly because of kind of a geographic limitation. I didn't have the desire to really move out of the Madison, Wisconsin area. So that narrowed things down significantly, which made it a little easier to make my decision. But focusing on, what was important to me, not only in my career, but also in my life, in my life outside of pharmacy as well, really helped me see that I thought I would be the happiest in a managed care setting while also still progressing and learning in my kind of pharmacy life as well.
Just to add on to Courtney, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head. That's exactly how I felt when I was making my decision on where I wanted to land. I'll just add one little tidbit. I mean, you don't necessarily have to choose. I went through both the managed care pharmacy, residency route, and I also went down the fellowship route. So I also participated in the Rutgers Fellowship Program at ASHP while I did the residency showcase. Don't get me wrong, I was exhausted during ASHP because I was from morning to night doing both the breakfast with pharmaceutical companies and then going to the interview process for the Rutgers program and then going to the residency showcase and shaking hands and then following up thereafter. So you can do it. If you don't know what you want to do, that doesn't mean you have to choose today. You can cast a wide net and see where you land. And I ended up landing in managed care. I think I could have been successful in a lot of the different areas that I probably applied to, but obviously sometimes your life takes a path and you land where you land. I will just simply say, similar to Courtney, right? I went through a lot of rotations during my 4th year. And as I went through my clinical rotations, I just saw that just wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be in a hospital setting. I didn't want to have longer hours and a chaotic sort of schedule because a lot of pharmacists had to be on schedule at certain times. I knew what I wanted from a work-life balance perspective. I appreciated the 8 to 5, 9 to 5 kind of work gig. It was nice not working in the weekends, not working in the evenings. And I saw that, and that's part of the reason why I went towards the managed care and the fellowship route as well. But don't let that deter you. If you have an interest in all of those areas, it's okay to cast that wide net and see where you end up landing. Just recognize that you should try to put in as much work as you would in if you only picked one of those, as you probably would across the board. And it will be a stressful time during the winter, but just remember that it's only going to be a short period of time.
Question 8, Stephen, if you want to take this one on research projects, what are some of the projects you've seen in the past?
Sure. Well, all of our research projects kind of have a common theme, and that's looking at our claims data and our outcomes data to see how drugs are working in the real world. One of my favorite projects of the last couple of years was looking at biologics for asthma and seeing how those compared, seeing how like real world evidence compares to the clinical trials. And that was fun because the endpoints that we could look at with our claims data really closely matched the endpoints in the trials. But yeah, so all of our projects have some kind of component of real world data and outcomes assessments.
Thank you. Alex or Courtney, anything you'd like to add to this one?
I guess I can kind of speak to my project and my co-residence projects as well. So I'm currently working on a project looking at a formulary change that was made here. So seeing the cost savings that can be associated with interchangeable biosimilars, since Semglee or insulin glargine was the first interchangeable biosimilar to come to market in the United States, and seeing did that save money, since biologics in general are such a huge part of the market right now and only going to continue to grow. So biosimilars are a really kind of exciting new space to look at. And that's my project. One of my co-residents is looking at the impact of copays and the kind of price of medications as a whole on somebody's spending, like personal spending on medications, and how that impacts their adherence, which I think is really kind of an interesting way to look at it. And then my other co-resident is looking at another formulary change with a couple different medications and seeing, was it effective? Did it end up saving clients and members money? And then, as was mentioned before, freeing up money to spread the care around the larger population.
Yeah, and I'll just add, so our residence research project last year was looking at the comparative clinical outcomes of SGLT2 inhibitors, GLP-1 receptor agonists, and short-acting insulin. And that project has been very instrumental because even beyond our residency program, other areas within Blue Cross have interest in our results, since it ties into our risk-based contracts that we have with provider groups, since we also have an overall quality initiative with our provider partners throughout the state to encourage prescribing of these newer diabetes agents since they have better outcomes as they relate to cardiovascular. So we really try to identify a project that's timely, relevant, that also would be of interest to areas outside of pharmacy. So really great opportunity to have cross collaboration and get that exposure for our resident.
Thank you. Two last questions. We'll see if we get them both in or not. And by all means, enter a question too if you have it still in the Q&A. But 9 is, Stephen, what are some common mistakes or perhaps a couple things to try to avoid during the application or interview process?
Yeah, I put a lot of weight on the letter of intent, the letter that you submit with your application. Really, when I'm looking at our stacks and stacks of applications, that's one of the first things I really hone in on. And often someone can really hurt themselves with their application if that letter of intent just doesn't make sense for our program, if they didn't do the research. I'm kind of going back to a comment earlier about doing the research for the programs. If it's clear that we're just not we're not a program that the candidate has really invested their time in or researched, it really hurts their status. So yeah, I put a lot of weight on the letter of intent, and I would encourage everyone here to really focus on that as you apply to the programs.
Thank you. And then 10, what's your advice if a student is interested in managed care, but they haven't had any managed care experience?
Yes, so, oftentimes the opportunities may be limited for students to get managed care, internships or APPE rotations. So what I really like to tell students is, you can tailor your assignments and projects in your different rotations based on your interests. Definitely upfront when starting a rotation, tell your preceptor the types of things that you're interested in for your development. So even when you have a hospital rotation, getting involved in a medication use evaluation, MUE, drug use evaluation, DUE, those are those cross over into the managed care world with outcomes research. When you're on a drug information rotation, that's like, the bread and butter of managed care in applying drug information skills. So there's definitely ways you can get managed care type of activities incorporated in non-managed care rotations. So that's what I tell a lot of students is to seek out those opportunities, even extra projects from faculty that are looking for students' help. Getting involved in an outcomes related project is another great way to get managed care related experience.
Excellent. And just in time, there's one question in the chat. How many applicants typically apply and how many are interviewed? For us, we try to interview about 6 per spot. And that's about half to 1/3 of the total that apply. Alex or Stephen, would you care to answer that one as well?
Yeah, we do around 7 to 8 per one spot. So that's in line.
Okay.
Yep, we try to interview about 9 for our one spot.
Great. Thank you all for joining us today. And I believe Avon will share his email address as well if there are any questions or things that we didn't address but you have interested in. And like all the panelists mentioned, we really want to meet you. Please reach out. We want you to be at a residency, an employer, a fellowship, whatever it is, where you can bring your whole self and learn as much as possible every day. So please do connect and reach out.
Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.